Virtually every leader in the health freedom movement talks about the insecurity of the food supply as one of the primary avenues of tyranny. Our family has rigorously sourced our foods for over a decade, and one of our favorite sources is Farm Match. And specifically, if you are in San Diego, Real Food Club PMA. My kids are literally made from their maple breakfast sausage and the amazing carnitas we make from their pasture-raised pork. But from regeneratively raised raw dairy products to the organic potato chips made in regenerative lard, or anything you might get at your local farmer's market, our family's overall wellness and the security of our food lies in the hands of Farm Match and Real Food Club. I am so excited to be sharing about Farm Match and Real Food Club to offer Future Generations podcast listeners 10% off your first order. You can find the code and link in the show notes. Enjoy the rest of the show. Love and appreciate you all. The desire to go off-grid and disconnect from the system was one of the single most important initiatives any household could have. Whether it is growing our own food, becoming sovereign in our energy production and usage, establishing alternative communication strategies, or digging a well and finding the infinity of primary water. About a year and a half ago, our family moved into our new home in North County, San Diego on 3 acres of precious land here in America's finest county. One of the first things we did was hire Food Forest Abundance to design a regenerative layout for our land. From the different trees to plant differing berry guilds and synergistic pollinators, to consulting on alternative energy, collecting our rainwater, and even helping us find our local well guy, Food Forest Abundance and their Freedom Farm Academy has been pivotal in the gradual and consistent evolution of our household towards true sovereignty from the system. They have helped us simplify a very confusing process and helped us create the design of our dreams. It doesn't matter if you have 3 acres, dozens or hundreds, or just a small yard. Food Forest Abundance has something to offer you and your family in your journey to move your entire household off-grid. Use the code TheFutureGen to work with the absolute best in the world, Food Forest Abundance, to create your own freedom farm and get off-grid at a discounted rate. Welcome to another episode of the Future Generations podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stanton Hom, and this episode with Katie Hess from Lotus Wei is one of the most powerful, one of the most important. If you care at all about disrupting the perspectives around Newtonian physics, disrupting the perspectives around conventional medicine, disrupting the medicine, even the disrupting anything around natural medicine in a lot of ways, that is still largely stuck in Newtonian physics, still stuck in a linear path. Katie is one of my favorite people who I've ever interviewed, who has delved into this world. Her company is focused on flower essences. I've been studying flower essences since I was in my mid-20s, as I was healing from a lot of chronic things that the military does to people, the chronic illnesses, the PTSD, the chronic gut issues. And Katie has a system and a product and a company who's grounded in not only the quantum level of healing and this kind of vitalistic perspective that we are way more than our body parts, that we are way more than just kind of systems and cells and organs, that we are vital beings that have this unique ancestral blueprint to understand, to integrate, interface, and actually heal from things like flowers. This perspective is something that I have a personal experience with since my early 20s, and it's something that it helped me transform and heal from a lot of chronic illnesses that I had as a result of military experience, military toxicities, military industry infraction on all of our genes and our bodies, and suffering from 4 chronic illnesses in my mid-20s and finding ways to heal. Energy medicine, homeopathics, flower essences were an avenue, and Lotus Wei is a very modern spin on something that has been so part of the human healing experience since the dawn of time. And so I invite you to investigate, to dabble, or as she recommends, to use recklessly these amazing products from Lotus Wei because our family has really dramatically transformed as a result of them. In the last about 3 months, Katie reached out to us to have a podcast. She sent me all of these different resources to check out. And then she has this really unique questionnaire on her website that I invite you to do. We're going to post the link below in our show notes. That honestly, Blueprint specific tagged me, tagged my children. And since we've implemented a lot of her products into our home, into our daily routines, the energetic signature of healing in our family has dramatically transformed. And I know I've shared a lot about my son. I'm going to be sharing more about my daughter. I know I've been sharing a lot about my wife and I healing. And I consider this installation of Lotus Wei and Katie's products into our home, into our daily routine, to be one of the most foundationally transformative. And I'm so grateful. I hope you enjoy this episode, especially if you're looking for solutions to transform your family, tree your children's healing potential. Great products, great company, amazing human being. Enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Future Generations podcast, providing you with the world-changing content necessary to inspire you, your family, and our planet to a life of optimal health potential. We'll help you make the choices that powerfully influence the lives you bring into this world. It's time to strengthen our resolve, do better now, and for our future generations. I'm your host, Dr. Stanton Hom. Okay, welcome to another episode of the Future Generations podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stanton Hom, and this is a very special episode. And I think just getting to connect before we hit record, but also just maybe the different synchronistic ways that we've been brought together, and then also just some of the questions you asked me before we hit record. Katie was like, "Okay, like we're gonna get a little deeper underneath the surface to some degree," and I would just say in general, when we were connected and then there was a suggestion, like just a kind suggestion and offering to do a almost like a questionnaire. I don't know exactly what you would call it, but like the flower essences / flower pictures, like what are you most attracted to, was an interesting, like completely way outside of my normal way of kind of navigating things. I just thought it was amazing. And I can't wait till we talk more about that. But Katie Hess from Lotus Wei, I love everything that you put out there. I love a lot of the higher messages, the deeper messages. But now, thanks to your generous offering to us, my family has been deeply immersed in your essences for some time, and it's been so energetically, spiritually nourishing that I have felt for a long time has been a big void for us. And so, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for everything that you've already done, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Such a pleasure to be here. I've been so looking forward to this moment. And yeah, my name is Katie Hess. I'm the founder of Lotus Wei and of the Self-Arising Nature Center, a wellness center in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been working with flowers and flower essences for the last almost 25 years.
Wow.
And I just couldn't be more excited to have these conversations because in my field of work, things are evolving at such a rapid pace that just like, it makes me feel so alive every day. And I'm psyched to be here. Thank you.
It took me back to, because people ask me all the time, like, how and why do you speak out about medical freedom and that kind of stuff? And most people don't know that I've been really educating myself through my own journey of self-healing since I got out of the military in 2005, which is my connection to Alec. We're both West Point grads, and the wake of all the things that do occur to human beings in the uniformed services is quite remarkable. And so I was learning about all the things that the industry does to veterans in terms of toxicity. And then I was learning about holistic healthcare and about natural remedies and all sorts of things. And I remember taking a amazing class on homeopathy, and I remember taking a class on Bach flower essences back then. And, you know, like to this day, Star of Bethlehem, like a lot of the different ones that I remember very uniquely because they were all part of my own self-healing journey. And then as I was going through different practitioners, that would be almost a way that I could vet some providers that there would just be a deeper layer to what type of care I was going to be experiencing. And so I just want you to know that when that force brought you and I together, it was like a breath of fresh air, because at the same time, I think back to those classes and I think through even still using some of those every once in a while. It's like there was, it felt like the industry needed like a rebrand and a refresh. And I felt like when I saw you on Alex's podcast, like, whoa, this is it, you know? And it was, and then, you know, to go through the questionnaire and to get kind of my own little assessment on the flowers that I was attracted to. And then it was like inspired action. I was like, whoa, like that's like me, you know, and it was almost like contextually very attractive to go through that process as well. So I just wanted to say thank you. And also just like, tell me more. Like, I'd love to know more about how you came to be.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a treasure when you say that you felt that kind of connection with it. To me, it feels like something very, 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 very old, you know, from a very long time ago that's been around for thousands of years. And we see evidence of that in pretty much every culture. And yet it's like also this, it's almost like a hidden jewel, you know, when things, it's like when the student is ready, the master appears. And when the humanity is ready, this treasure of this type of healing modality can be unearthed to a deeper and greater extent and utilized to create this kind of massive ripple effect on the planet and the right timing. And I find that what I'm really excited about these days is like collaborating with other practitioners, because I believe there are really deep rooted connections between flower essences and traditional Chinese medicine, flower essences in the homeopathy world, in the old alchemy worlds, right? The old herbalism worlds. So it's like this really exciting process for me of almost, in a sense, it's like reconnecting with all of these people that I've known before with a modality that we've used before, right? Like you said, refreshing it and bringing it into a new light in a new world in this particular time where it's just so critically needed.
I'm curious. I appreciate you sharing that background about just that these, I don't even love to call them modalities. I don't love the word therapy, but I do love the connection, right? And we could say nature, right? But the infinity of it, right? The infinity of the human experience, of nature itself, of the earth, of the ancestral connection to everything around us. And I found that it wasn't just me. It was when I sent you a message follow-up to say, hey, by the way, like my family has been going through things, right? Like the things that, you know, life brings, but then the things that the last 4 years of the polarization, the divisiveness, the crazy aspects of psychological operations, if we want to call them, and who gets caught in the wake of a lot of those. And then again, like you come back with, through your own assessments, like fierce compassion being like a unique signature for my wife and my daughter. And it literally, like I right now could get and drop into like the deepest states of emotion because of how like dead on that was on pinning me, but also pinning them. And I'm curious where some of that comes from for you.
Well, I mean, it comes from you. It's like a mirror into your heart, right? The flowers are mirrors. And I mean, Mother Earth has been around for over 4.5 billion years. There's so much wisdom there. There's so much aliveness. There's so much like updated and upgraded information for us to receive right now. And, you know, over the over the last 20 some years, working with flowers, you know, have come to understand that everybody actually knows what they need, which is such a like, you know, reframe, right? Because in the world of allopathic medicine, it's very much like, you know, somebody puts on the white coat and they know better, right? Like there's something about you that's wrong, that needs fixing. And only I with the white coat can tell you what that is and how your fix is going to be, right? Which is also questionable.
Right.
But when you look at the world of flower essences inherent in even just like figuring out what remedies you need, the answer is always within you. So it totally flips the frame on how we've been looking at things. And it puts the power back into people's hands of like, holy shit, yeah, like I can trust my intuition. And in fact, you don't even have to call it intuition. You can trust your senses. You can trust your eyes. Like you can trust your fingers. If you're in a flower shop and you like gravitate towards a certain flower, it's because that's exactly what your body needs in that moment.
Interesting.
If you're drawn to a certain taste, a smell, a place, a geographical location for your vacation, for your family, right? Like all of these things, it's like a remembering process of being able to trust in your inner compass, and what you're drawn to is precisely what you need, and that you are indeed the master. You are the doctor. You are the guru. You are the all-knowing force, you know, in a sense. And then in that way, it's just like a practice of getting more comfortable trusting in that. And the flower essences are hugely supportive of helping us remember that and be able to like accept that again.
So I'm curious. I'm always curious in people's inspirations, and if there was any sort of like cathartic moment that inspired you to literally 25 years of this journey. Mm-hmm. I'm curious what that was.
So many moments, right? I mean, like if you wanted me to just like sprinkle some moments, it would be the way I met my teacher of flower essences was super weird and wild. Like I was living in Mexico. I was studying different forms of holistic medicine. And I ended up running into this indigenous woman on the street. There was nobody else around. She handed me a flyer. You know, it's like in Mexico, you get all these flyers, usually toss them in the trash. I look down and I'm like, a course in Mexico City in flower remedies? What? Like this guy is flying in from Madrid?
Wow.
So I like looked for the indigenous woman and I couldn't find her anywhere. Like I went up and down streets looking for her everywhere and I couldn't find her. And I thought, this is just bizarre. Like your hat, expect miracles. Like, how did I run into this woman? And why was she handing out flyers? There's nobody else on the street. It was like almost like she was looking for me. So I went to Mexico City. I studied with this gentleman. He's the one who said, if we can get 3% of the world's population working with these remedies, it will change the future of this planet. And he wasn't very specific on how that is. Wow. And probably at this point, I would say it's more like 1% for the tipping point. But that got me. I was going through some health issues at the time. And I found that I could completely resolve them with flower essences. Wow. And then throughout the years, it's really just seeing people liberate themselves from their baggage in such a rapid time. Like when we do trainings and workshops, I think people are most impressed when they see the before and after photos. So they'll be like, here's a pilot. How's he looking? Pretty run down, right? Here's 3 weeks later of working with flower essences. And they're like, no way, that's not the same guy. Like all the ladies are like, I'd never date that first guy. And then 3 weeks later, they're all like, I'd date that guy. Wow. So seeing people transform really rapidly in front of my eyes. And then I would say, I mean, there's just so much magic, Stanton, that I could tell you about. Mm-hmm. I could tell you about collecting flower essences and like feeling the earth rumble under my feet with thunder after like basically making wishes and prayers to find this super endangered species of orchid and finding it in a totally miraculous way and feeling like the earth was like responding to us being there. I mean, there's so much magic in the actual collection process. Or you could look at it from like in the last few years, exactly what your family went through. It's like, now I understand what my flower essence teacher meant when he told me that in 1998. It's like, oh shit. Now I understand also why, all the remedies that we're coming out with right now are for dissolving subconscious fears.
Wow.
Because we need to get humanity fucking fearless. We need to be like absolutely like stable and trusting in our ability to lead our lives forward, and then even just like recently, some of the things that are coming out with this kind of net of beautiful practitioners that we work with are saying, okay, I'm looking at this truth teller, right? The simple remedy of flowers for telling the truth. It's helping nonverbal autistic children speak within 1 month of use.
Wow.
Like, what on earth is going on? Like, this is at a level where I don't even really understand what's happening here. Or like folks with dementia using a particular remedy and then having like the ability to speak cognitively.
Wow.
Like instantly. So, it's just been like kind of miraculous thing after miraculous thing. And I'm not going to say it's easy, right? Because that growing a business is not easy. And especially a business that requires your own, like I can't slack off and say, I'm not going to be transforming. I can't just like sit back and be lazy. Honestly, like if I'm super honest with you, I feel that in some ways the backbone of this company is that I'm willing to face whatever dark shit comes up, right?
Yeah.
Or hard stuff or fears or awful moments, right? Because if I can do it, then I can make a remedy for other people to help other people do that, right? Like so many of the like most kind of hardcore remedies that we have are because I had a like terrible experience. And then I was like, I never want anyone else to feel the way I'm feeling right now. So, from like highs and lows and everything in between, it's just this like living entity that never stops. And I think that's why people kind of get so hooked in is it's like, you never stop evolving. There's always another flower to show you another aspect of yourself that you never saw before. And it's like limitless. There's no end to it.
I'm curious about the process, right? Like I remember reading I was so intrigued by Edward Bach at the time. And back then was 2005. So you started in 98. It's like you go back to those time frames. And I was telling somebody yesterday, like when I was at West Point, it was 1996. And my first spiritual teacher actually discovered it at West Point in the bookstore, Ethics for a New Millennium, the Dalai Lama. Like I started to devour his books when I was in the United States Military Academy, arguably, which affectionately Alec calls the greatest indoctrination camp in the world, right? And in 2005, I remember like, wow, like there's something about this signature, about the constitutional understandings of people's makeup and then like how, right? And so I remember finding a book, I think it was called Heal Thyself back then. And I remember just devouring it. And this is like pre-chiropractic. This is long before I was a provider. And I'm curious, like you're moving into my next question anyways, right? Because I'm curious about like voids, right? Voids that lead to value, challenge that leads to inspiration. And this process that you are literally like alchemizing like a living being flower into an energetic signature that leads to. We work with children every day. Part of the Expect Miracles process is that kids with chronic challenges, especially children that are nonverbal, speaking are one of those moments where you're like, what just happened, right? And we start to dive deep and understand the neurology behind it. And then there's this thing that happens where it's like a flower essence, right? Like I could probably intuit and kind of really go through like the different pathways that have to be inspired to lead to that outcome. But I'm curious if you could maybe practically talk about what that process is to actually go from experience to remedy, but also just like how you see that process of somebody actually experiencing it leading to some healing transformation.
Yeah. I mean, so many stories. Like the flower that overnight took me from seeing people one-on-one in consultations to growing a larger business at scale and being asked to make stuff for the president of the United States at the time.
Wow.
Was a night blooming Cereus flower. It's a particular kind of cactus here that grows here in Arizona. It only blooms one night a year.
Wow.
I had no idea. I was like in meetings trying to get this like really fancy resort and spa to hire me to create all of their like basically signature spa experiences. And because I had been like operating in the natural health world and basically nobody wanted what I had. And so I basically just got down on my knees and I was like, Earth, you gotta show me where to go. And then for 3 months, I worked on this project trying to get this job, right? Or this opportunity to make products for this resort. And the day that they hired me, I walked to my car and there was this massive flower on a cactus, or massive bloom, actually, like a bud about to bloom. And I was like, oh my God, I wonder what that is. I've never seen that before. I snuck back on the property at 10:30 at night. And this flower was massive, like the size of my head. And I ended up having to bring it home because the security guard was wondering what I was doing. And on the way home, I had this crazy experience of like, oh my God, there's the police. I'm going to get pulled over. They're going to know I stole this flower. Like, and then I had to stop and remind myself like, oh, this flower is showing me the imbalanced state, right? The fears, the paranoias, the limitations we impose on ourselves that prevent us from our full expansion. That flower literally took my business from me seeing clients one-on-one for 10 years in a very private space to like scaling internationally.
Wow.
So I know that when anybody comes into our wellness center and says, ooh, that one, that's cool flower, I'm drawn to that. I'm like, okay, hold on to your pants. Like there's some area in your life that you're not doing baby steps anymore. You're ready to take a big leap.
Wow.
You know, or there have been times like I can tell you about 1 or 2 years ago, I had this just probably the most grief I have ever experienced in my life. Like I just didn't know that the bottom of the barrel was that low.
Wow.
It was like, you know, those moments where you, and actually, who knows? Maybe people do know the moments, maybe they don't. I was like, you know, had gone through several decades of my life without feeling this experience. And suddenly I'm like on my knees at my friend's house, in her front lawn, in the grass, don't care what the neighbors think of me, don't care who sees me, don't care about the 10 people that I just like bolted on the dinner party. If they, you know, make fun of me or think I'm crazy or what, I'm just like sobbing on the ground in the grass, like snot everywhere on my face. I mean, just like never felt the depth of that despair before. From that, I was like, after that experience, in some ways you feel stronger. It's like, you know, it's like you going into the military. You have experiences in the military that you're just like, people don't understand this. And because I've had this experience, I'm stronger for it. It's like that. And then I was like, but I also don't want people to stay stuck in that place. So I have to figure out how to make a remedy that's going to pull people out of that deep well. That remedy that we have is called Sacred Heart. It's 9 flowers that are white. Most of them are night blooming. And that is the blend that today, the most times that we see this phenomenon, which I should say is only happening in the last year, where somebody walks in, we like mist them lightly, and they burst into tears. And like all their shit just comes right up to the surface and like comes out and lets itself go. It's like the most kind of turbo, you know, the junk that you don't even know is there that's like stuck back in the closet and they just like, and then it's over. So that's kind of like, those are like a couple different ways. You know, one feels like very expansive, like business. And then one is just like the depths of suffering.
Yeah.
But it's like it processes through us, it processes through the team, and then anybody else who uses the flower essences.
Yeah. What would you verbalize as, maybe like what would you verbalize as our species? Like, what are some of the biggest challenges we face today?
Mm. I mean, of course, you could go external and physical and say that we're bombarded by so many toxins from so many different angles that we just don't even know where it's all coming from, and our capacity to detox is going to need to, like, we're going to have to put a lot more attention into that area to be able to keep our physical form at a state that our mental form can be stable. Or we could go internal and say, because we just don't want to feel things, or we just want to numb out things. It's freaking hard to be human. And we, at a rapid rate, are being asked to experience more intense states of transformation, let's call it. There's also like a lot of nefarious forces that we've become aware of more acutely that seem to have some sort of kind of more speed or pull or force to them at this point. At the same time that I feel like we have more capacity to hold and grow and expand and look at the things that are hard. It's kind of a mixed bag, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Something you said earlier made me feel like we can externalize a lot of that. But when you said like we need people to be fucking fearless, it's like, yes, we could focus on the tech overlords and the shadow banning and all the things that they do, right? And all the different tactics and tricks and all the things that make you question the free world. And we can also maybe sit back and recognize that we self-censor every day more than anyone could censor us, right?
100%.
And I think that's something that I feel very like, I feel is what I feel inspired to have this conversation at all is because we could focus on the external. We could focus on the 88,000 chemicals that are in the universe today, and 2,300 are studied for generally regarded as safe, but none of them are studied together, and we can get focused on all of that. And it's endless. And it's the end state of that is like, well, which thing are you going to fear, and which thing is going to kill you, and which thing is going to be your demise? And not or, right? And how about recognizing that there's this internal infinity of divinity that largely I feel very much is what I felt called to express more of. And it was like, I have never done a questionnaire that just says, what flower are you the most attracted to? And I've never really thought about what anything I'm most attracted to. And then all of a sudden I'm doing this whole introspective understanding that was like, and it was like not even overthinking. It was like, oh, I'm attracted. That is very easy. It's very reflexive on what I'm most attracted to. And it was like, I think that's also why I'm so like attuned to having this conversation at all, is because it's way outside of my norm. It's way outside of my comfort zone. And it's way outside of what I believe is societally we're used to, right? And what is behind that? Because you said like, what are you most drawn to? And then feel it, smell it, taste it. Like all the different aspects of things are all contextually how we might be drawn in resonance to something. But what I'd love for you to tell me, because
Well, you said something earlier that was like polarization, right? Separation. And I think the ultimate expression of that is like dualism and this idea that we're separate from each other. So I had a Tibetan teacher once tell me, I've had a lot of Tibetan teachers, but one of them told me something that really disappointed me. And he said, life is like a snake in a bamboo rod. Like you are either going up or you're going down. There's no like happy medium. There's no like, I'm just going to coast here for a while or be neutral. We are either making a concerted effort every day to be more aware, to improve, to like sharpen our skills, to be better people, to, seeing what's in the blind spots, improving, or we're just going down because the gravity and the momentum of our habitual patterns and tendencies pulls us down. And we see that when we look at like elderly couples. You've seen the elderly couple that's like more crunched and cranky and rigid and bickery and row, and then you've seen the elderly couple that's like expansive and joyous and loving and generous and just wow, and that's the snake going up and the snake going down. And I was so bummed when my teacher told me that, because I don't know, for some reason I thought like we got to pass, like maybe you could just have a year where you just kind of chilled for a minute. No, it's like you have to work hard, and you have to work harder, and you have to work harder. And the more realized and actualized you become in your full potential, you have to work even harder, right? Or smarter, maybe. And I think this whole idea of like the external enemy, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama would speak about that a lot. The external enemy is very easy to blame when it's out there. But the ultimate strategy for today, I believe, the fastest, most effective strategy is here. Yeah. It's here. We transform the world by transforming ourselves. If indeed we want to accept that we are connected to every other human on this earth, and there is a sort of consciousness level where there is a collective, then everything I do and say and be and how I exist is constantly feeding back into that grid. It's like when people put solar panels on their house and they're like feeding back into the grid. It's like, that's what we're doing. We're one giant grid and we're feeding information into it by our simple existence. And there are some human beings on this planet, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who by his mere fucking existence, he is uplifting, hundreds of thousands of people, right? And I've seen people, like this is the Dalai Lama himself, I've seen him on multiple occasions, and it's like somebody added a new sun to the solar system when he walks down the street. It's like mind blowing. That same teacher that was telling me about the snake in the bamboo, he did a 3-year solitary retreat in a cave. So he didn't see any other human beings for 3 years. He locked himself up in a cave. He had plenty of food saved up. And he told me that there was a moment during his retreat when the walls caved in on him. Like his whole cave fell in on top of him, and he was terrified. And he said, and you know what? The whole thing was a hallucination. It wasn't real. And like so much of what we experience is a hallucination in some way, right? It's like a waking dream. So if we understand that as human beings, we have this tremendous fucking capacity that is like beyond even what our logical mind can comprehend. Like I have a friend, Lisa, who spent 11 years in Asia studying with some of the greatest meditation masters who are no longer alive, one of which put his foot through solid rock, just like it's butter, So if we as humans actually, with a little effort, have the capacity to move through the space that's in the solid form, well, yeah, hands down. I'd much rather have that conversation than talk about which chemicals are going to take us out.
And it's in almost every avenue of natural health, you could go that far, right? If you're going down like the nutrition route, you could talk about, what is the latest nutrient that treats this condition? Or you can go back and recognize the infinity of like something so ubiquitous today as bone broth, and how like if that were to be something that you could implement into your life through that lens, like how much more robust your system would respond just by matter of changing the worldview and changing the lens that you're looking through. I think it's remarkable to share that, because I think at the end of the day, I was interviewing someone who I feel is remarkably as profound as this conversation. And she was talking about how ancestral people, like, there are no words for depression. There are no words to say, hey, I need my space, right? There's no chronic illness. There's no issues with fertility. And by the way, it's like, it's robust virility. And these children that at a very young age are operating at genius levels of inspiration that largely, last their entire lifetime, where they're centenarians and they're able to leap, 3 feet off the ground for 15 minutes at a time that would gas virtually most modern humans in a lot of respects. And so it's really, I really love that you shared that, because I think it's something that we need to reframe in ourselves, that it's not just doing that one thing a little bit better, just feeling a little bit better the next day and getting out of bed a little bit less tired. It's actually just remembering and uncovering that we are from this absolute infinity of the divine that we've forgotten, right? We've been so disconnected from, right? What would you say, if you could verbalize like the mission that you find yourself on? I love that you can speak with so much conviction, because sometimes we get into these fields and we're so holistic that there's no cursing and there's no, like, it's like there isn't that level of and I think it's both and, right? You have dug deep and you have committed yourself to the self-actualization and the self-awareness and the self-healing, but that inspires in the ability to offer that to the world. But how would you verbalize that for yourself?
At this point, I think it is like the ultimate covert mission. It's like, it isn't being an activist. It isn't shouting from the rooftops. It's a very quiet process. And it's like, how can I like see a blind spot through the assistance of flower essences, also meditation, right? Also my awareness. How can I see something in my, like, something that I can like transform in myself, and then it rubs off on others, and then others feel more powerful, and others feel more truthful, and others feel more wise, it's like really a covert operation. It's so quiet, so subtle, so can't be seen, that we're so off the radar in a sense. It's like something invisible that doesn't have a sound, that sparks people's courage, fearlessness, ability to tell the truth, openness to receive, able to be more intimate in relationships, more able to be vulnerable.
Wow.
Like, it makes a big difference. If every single person on this planet were so much more like actualized into their full potential, I don't even know if we could imagine what that would be like. I always ask when I'm doing workshops, okay, if anybody here has fully realized your capacity, right? Like, you're as wise, as bold, as courageous, as incredible as you'll ever be. Nobody ever raises their hand. Doesn't matter how big your ego is or how much you think you're hot shit, No one ever will raise their hand, because innately we know there's more. So how do we put the pedal to the metal? That's the question. And what we find with flower remedies is that the normal amount of personal growth we go through in about 6 months is sped up to like 1 or 2 months.
Wow.
Why wouldn't we want to do that?
What would you say? I appreciate the testimony about the child with nonverbal autism. I'm curious what you would say you have seen, especially as it relates to kids. We have, I would say, a unique audience that is very much involved in natural health, self-healing, health freedom, but specifically we have a lot of parents, and I'm curious what you would say about that.
Oh, I feel like kiddos are much more receptive to flower remedies than adults, and they can shift a lot more quickly.
I'm laughing because my son, like, we do like fierce compassion, like before, like bath, and we do like a few herbs, and then like he just like walks up and he just goes like, big smile on his face, and it's just like, psh. He's like, he like, it's like a full experience for him. It's amazing. It's wonderful to watch.
I mean, it's at this precious time, right, where everything's so open. Kids are so open. They're so open. They do not see the world like us crunchy adults do. So in my view, flower essences are like a way to like keep them open and like give them all kinds of juice and encouragement on a very subtle level from nature, to just keep them in that open state as much as possible and to remove as much static and snags and confusion while they're in that beautiful, open, precious state. I mean, we see it in like kids who throw tantrums. There are flower essences that will just like cut it immediately. They just calm down and like breathe. Or like little kiddos who come in looking like 95-year-old men, like wrinkled and cranky, looking like they had a terrible, it's like, you're so little. What are you so worried about? Little spritz of joy juice and they're laughing, or like I've worked with clients who, they bring their young kids in and they're like, all of a sudden out of nowhere, she's just like, I hate you, Mom. I hate you. She's like, I don't know where she got that. Like, where's she getting this from? A little bit of infinite love flower essences. And it's like, all that's gone. Now it's warm and fuzzy and affectionate, So, pretty much anything that arises, I see kids being able to move through it a lot more quickly, and their behaviors are so funny. Like with the elixirs, I'll see kids like, give me more, Mom. Like, I'll have more. I'll have more. I'll have more. And they want the elixir like 25 times in an hour.
Yeah.
And then they'll like not use it for a little while. And then they'll see it again and they'll just like consume it like much more than you would think they should, where the parents are like, okay, honey, you've had enough. And I'm always trying to like tell the parents, like, no, let them have as much as they want. Like, let them just kind of let it rip and see what their habits are with it. Because they kind of know what they need a little better than we do.
Yeah.
Because they're just so open.
So many people have asked me what I do to stay mentally and physically resilient in the midst of the unending polarization, fear, and tyranny. Literally nothing has made a bigger impact for me than daily cold plunging. 3 minutes, 37 degrees every morning for over a year now. My friends, I wanted to tell you about the Edge Tub from Edge Theory Labs. Their portable and inflatable tub can alternate between an ice bath and hot tub. I've been regenerating the benefits of cold plunging every day, like better sleep, better focus, and more energy. We have had some really amazing interviews to learn more about cold exposure. But in the meantime, I invite you to check out Edge Theory Labs' website to learn more. I'm also happy to share an exclusive offer for Future Generations podcast listeners, $150 off using the code TheFutureGen. You can find more info in the show notes. Get cold. What's up, FG fam? One of the single best companies whose products have supported the optimal wellness of our family for years is Earthly Wellness. Kate TG and her team have stood for truth, health, and freedom in ways that paved the way for so many of us. They experienced heavy levels of censorship long before it was popularized, and they stood strong and persevered. Their products are clean, cost-effective, and honestly, they work for all ages. From supporting my wife, our oldest, and our little guy, Earthly Wellness provides products that have been foundational for our family for years. We especially use their products right before bedtime. Their Feel Better Fast and other herbal tinctures are some of the best in the world, as well as their amazing Goodnight Lotion, the magnesium oil, are mainstays. I am so excited to be partnering with Earthly to offer Future Generations podcast listeners 10% off your first purchase. You can find the code link in the show notes. Enjoy the rest of the show. Love and appreciate you all. It's like when children and animals get adjusted. It's especially like the toddlers that aren't like expressing exactly what they're feeling or thinking in the moment, and then they start to move in a place where your hands would then lead to where they actually need an adjustment, versus being dictated by my technique or my expertise, and I have friends that are animal chiropractors, and they have the same exact testimony because animals are essentially that much more connected to that universal intelligence as well, so it's beautiful. I really appreciate that, because I would say uniquely, one of my team members asked me, like, of all the different chronic challenges that people come in with, like, what is the most frequent and what's the most ubiquitous? And I was like, I just reflexively said anxiety. And it was like, like, we don't see that on the intake form, but I said behind a lot of it is a nervous system that is just stuck in this state of fight or flight. And we can go down that whole stress response, but it's just like, I think it's intentional, right? By the system and by the people and the powers that be know that if they keep us there, then they can continually control us, right? And I'm curious how, like, I think that was one of your suggestions, like, use these frequently, use these as much as you feel like you need to. And I would love for you to share more about that, because people are always wondering, like, what's the minimum effective dose, and what is the, what's the tolerance for this? And I would say, I'd love to hear that perspective from you, because I don't think I hear that often.
Again, it has changed so much in the last couple decades. When I first started seeing clients, I would put together a remedy for them, one bottle, they'd take it over the course of a month. They were golden, right? That was also during the same time period where we weren't even really talking about sleep on their intake,
Wow, yeah.
We didn't even have smartphones then. I don't even know if we had like pagers. It was, maybe a Palm Pilot. So things have changed so much. And like with all the EMFs and all the increase of, stuff that we were talking about, I, at this point, feel like the more flower essences you can use in your daily life, the better. It's like, you're not going to get addicted. It doesn't have that quality, and your body knows how to kick it out if it doesn't need it. And, at this point, when I visit friends, I basically see that they just kind of place them all over their house. They've got some in their living room, in their bedroom, in their bathroom, in their car, at their office, on their desk. It's kind of like that you see it and you go, "Ooh, I want that one," and you use it. I put all the elixirs in my beverages. So whereas I used to take them internally, this is kind of weird. I don't really know why. I don't take them internally anymore, meaning I don't like drop them in my mouth. I put them in all my coffee, water, tea, everything I drink, it's in there. Maybe you could say it's almost like at a higher dose. So it's like homeopathically speaking, it's more dilute.
Oh, interesting. Like a greater dilution, but a greater potency. Right. Like the more you dilute in homeopathy, the more potent it actually is. That's great.
And what most people don't know, that like when they look at our flower essences, we actually do have something that's more like a 6X, like survival, something that's more like a 30C, and something that's more like, a million and up. And the more subtle it is, the more we find it's actually a collective pattern versus like an ancestral something I inherited in the last 6 to 8 generations of my lineage. Those are typically not as dilute.
Interesting. Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. What would you say one of your teachers said, like, hey, 3% of the population, and you're sharing that maybe it's 1%, right? And just thinking about in your solution, I'm very curious if you and Veda Austin came together and like what would that petri dish look like? I don't know if you're familiar with her work as far as like crystallizing like the water signatures and things like that. Like it's like my mind blow, right?
I have met Veda. She's a sweetheart. She's a total sweetheart. We met at the last Confluence event at Sovereignty Ranch. Yeah. This is kind of a funny story though, because we put flower essences out by where people were filling up their water bottles with Berkeys. So everybody was just like putting flower essences in their water. And then Veda had this kind of like workshop off to the side that was kind of impromptu, and she froze a couple water samples, and she asked somebody in the audience to take some water from their water bottle. And you know what appeared on the petri dish?
No.
It was a lotus.
No way.
And so people were like,
that's crazy.
Is that because everybody's putting Lotus Wei flower essences in the water? I mean, that's kind of what we thought, but I don't know how Veda interpreted that, but she's working with our flower essences right now. So like personally, so who knows, like it would be really interesting way of kind of making the unseen seen. I love her work. It's really beautiful.
But it's like, you like a Berkey, right? Or a reverse osmosis, right? Or we just put a well in, and these other guys that are connected through Confluence reached out to me yesterday, the primary water guys, and they're just like, "Hey, we want to come by and check out your well." I'm like, "Dude, sweet." Like, but you dive deep enough, and it's like, why wouldn't you put it into your water? Why wouldn't you put it into the thing that you are consuming?
Absolutely.
Whether it's the potency or whether it's the energetic signature, whether it is the potential restructuring of that thing in a way that largely would never have happened. And if it goes into your body, yes, it does that for you. But if it goes into the thing that you're consuming, like it has so much potential to exponentially shift
Oh my
things.
God. Exponential. That's the key word. Okay. So it kind of goes back to your previous question, which is like, how do you take it? And it's like as recklessly as you possibly
That's what
can.
it was.
It's like
That was the word.
reckless, reckless, reckless. We need to be rebellious and reckless. And it's like, when you watch your dog like go into the outside and go in the grass and just like rub their backs and like kick their legs. And like, that's kind of the vibe of how much we want to be introducing these things into our life. It's like, how much do you want to be in nature? A lot, as much as you possibly can. And when you look at like forest bathing scientific data coming out of the medical schools in Tokyo, they're showing that if you spend one day in the wild, your cortisol plummets and your white blood cells go up. And these are very like physical things. Like I'm actually more curious in like what happens to your aura. But they're saying that even just these physical ramifications, you spend one day in the wild, those health benefits last in your body for a week.
Wow.
What happens if you and your family say, oh my God, this is too awesome. We're going to cancel all our sessions tomorrow. We're staying another day. Then those health benefits last in your body for an entire freaking month.
Wow.
So the beauty of Mother Nature is exactly what you said, exponential. It is exponential. And I think one of the reasons we resonate so much with energy medicine is because we know that as human beings, on some level, we innately understand that we also are exponential. And one of my favorite studies, I always talk about this. There was a 10-year study, longitudinal study coming out of Boston, and they found that if your friend's friend's friend becomes wildly happy, it has more of a beneficial effect on you than if someone put $5,000 cash in your pocket.
Wow.
This is someone that you do not even know.
Wow.
Like maybe you could sort of track them along the trail of the old Facebook routes, It's like you don't even know them. Conversely, if you become wildly happy, it has more of a beneficial effect on your friend's friend's friend than if someone put $5,000 cash in their pocket. So it's like, we are so fucking powerful. And then you put something like human exponential potential next to Mother Nature exponential potential. It's like, we're unstoppable. This is the shit they don't want you to know. We are fucking powerful beyond we could even imagine.
3%, 1%. What do you envision for the world?
Contagious fearlessness, contagious love, contagious generosity, contagious empowerment, contagious embodiment, understanding, wisdom, awakening. Is it easy? Not necessarily. Do we have to be kind of like quiet warriors? Yes. Are we like the kind of inner Shaolin master, inside? Yes. But also like how beautiful is that? So, so beautiful.
What would you say what's one really practical thing that you could leave our audience with?
Practical. What does practical mean?
Actionable.
Actionable. I would just say like try flower essences. It doesn't have to be ours. It can be any of them. There are so many different flower essence makers around the world. But you can also do the quiz that Stanton and his family took, which is go to lotuswei.com, click on the quiz, choose the flowers you're most drawn to. If it resonates with you, if it feels right, try it, see what happens. I mean, we're seeing last week we saw a woman come in and she hadn't had her period for 7 years. She started taking radiant energy. A week later, she gets her period. How do you explain these things,
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, I could go on and on and on about stories. They can be physical, emotional, spiritual. And it's like, what do we have to lose? We kind of need all the support we can get. Being human is hard. So I would say just try flower essences, because so many people haven't used them or worked with them yet. And they just take the edge of life off. They make things a little easier.
I would say that overall, it was one of the most pleasant surprises, as I shared, like going through that questionnaire and then just having it kind of elicit in me something I just never really thought of. And then when you sent the audio, it was just like flower after flower. It's just like, interesting. No idea what I was looking at. No idea origins, don't know names, don't know anything about them. I just know what I was attracted to. And then on the opposite end of that, which I highly recommend people do, like is just, there's no like linear, oh, I'm only going to do inspired action because that's the one that was mine, right? It's just this definite symphony of, it's really interesting that you shared that, like people just put it over their homes. Like we're renovating our back space that is going to be a shared space, the workshop space, other allied providers. And it's interesting, right? Because it's my wife is, her thing is to aesthetics, beautify. Like she can take any space and then all of a sudden she's just like, her wheels are spinning on how to make it like the most inviting that it could be. And I didn't tell her I was interviewing you today until I just sent her a message not too long ago, and she goes, oh my gosh, tell her like how much we love her products and the face mist. Like I was just like, ooh, interesting. I haven't even tried that yet, but that's what that would be her thing. Right. And for me, it's more like, it's very much in alignment with the way that I would navigate things. And like I was sharing with my son, it's like, he's just showering, in it. He's 2, so he doesn't get the full liberty to play with it all. And then my daughter is a little different. And I almost wanted to ask you a question specifically about her, because I would just say the level of trauma that our kids have experienced is so dramatic. And it's to the point where they can't always like express to us what it is that they're navigating, although their full sensory experience is such that they know, they're aware, they don't know how to reconcile it, they don't know how to process and integrate it. And yet when my daughter did the questionnaire, which she very reflexively was like, that one, orange, like she just went through it very innately as well. What do you recommend for parents on how to guide their children through this type of process? Like we're all metamorphosizing, we're all alchemizing, we're all in the crucible. And a lot of us parents are like, my kids are stuck on video games. My kids are stuck in this. And like, there's all sorts of different aspects of things that are palliating the problem and the pain. But how would you help them really transform?
Yeah. I mean, if they're little, if they're still small, right? Like under 7, I would say let them guide you as parents, because there are so many different doorways of experience. Like there's something that maybe needs to heal, but talking about it isn't necessarily going to do it, right? Like maybe you put joy juice into the salad dressing and she has something at dinner and she starts hysterically laughing and falls on the ground and laughs for 15 minutes. And that's a healing crisis for her. And she just liberated some kind of trauma that was stuck in her fascia, right? Yeah. It could be through like hysterical laughter. Or it's like that, like misting, like misting your face and feeling and going like, oh my God, it's okay to be in my body. I'm safe. I can feel, I can soften, I can open. I'm safe, right? I can like take up space. I can become big. I can become powerful, right? So some of us, it's like the feeling, the mist, the sensation is the doorway, is the experience, right? And then if they're older, I mean, there is a certain level. I live with my 15-year-old niece, so like I understand there's a certain level of like boundaries, discipline, like off the internet, off the TikTok, Instagram, social media, freaking indoctrination, you know? They learn so much crap on there. So I get, like, I understand much more now than ever, like the value of like the restriction actually. But then turning them towards something else, like inviting them into a different type of experience. And then also like in teens, having them do the pick a flower, having them make it their own. It's not like there's something wrong, like we need to figure out what you need. It's like, oh, like if you as the parent are just like, oh my God, this smells so good. Oh, this smells so good. Oh, this is so great. Right. Then they get like kind of curious, like, what are you actually doing? Or like, oh, I'm making myself a natural soda with a root beer float with ice cream, and I'm putting this stuff on top that's, you know, for laughter. They just get curious. So it's just kind of like opening the doorway as much as possible and making it as accessible for them to create their own relationship with.
I love that.
And something else came to mind while you were talking. There's something that flower essences do. Have you ever heard the saying of like waking up the sleeping dragon?
Yes.
That's what they do. Like every one of us has this mystical, mythical, beautiful, unbelievable, powerful, fierce, fearless creature inside of us. And the flower essences, like little by little, gently, softly wake up that dragon inside of each of us.
Wow.
And that's kind of a fun analogy for kids too.
What would you... Do you suggest... I think I shared with you that we have some land, right? And like I said about my wife, like beautifying. And I think you actually made some suggestions, like you could actually just plant these flowers that you resonate with. And it could be those moments of forest bathing and, you know, actually inviting that experience of resonance, of healing, of attraction. How have you, do you do that yourself in your own space? Do you often, like in your garden and stuff like that, do you see that with some of the people that have those same experiences too, that they also then plant the flowers that they know that they resonate with and things like that and experience similar things?
Yeah, it's a really powerful way. I mean, it's kind of the OG, right?
Yeah,
It's the like
that's cool.
original way. In terms of your land, what I see, there's so much potential, especially if you are bringing your clients or patients onto your land. Is that what you're talking about? There's a possibility of that?
I think in the future, possibly, yeah.
Because, you know, or even in a different space, wherever you're seeing your patients, you can guide them through, you know, 15 different botanicals as they're walking on their way to the front door. And you can say, which one are you most attracted to? You can have them pick some, soak them in water, soak them in the sunlight, and dump it over their head. You can give them some to put in their bath. You can have a bathtub and do like full immersion in freshly made flower essences, depending on, you know, what they're experiencing. If it's somebody who's had just like one stressful event after another, you could give them a red hibiscus bath. There's a lot of different ways that you could incorporate it, you know, real time into your practice, or that people could have a greenhouse and be essentially like bathing in the energies of these flowers all the time. If you are like me and you're living in the desert, like Phoenix, Arizona, it's harder to have a garden.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, then that's where the flower remedies come in helpful.
That's so cool. As we close, is there anything that you feel called to share?
I feel like you have one more question in you somewhere.
I think I don't know where it is yet.
We have to locate it. Mm.
I feel like we're in a state of the world where I feel like the script has been flipped. And I was invited recently to participate in a potential collaboration with other chiropractors, and it was this thing to like inspire chiropractors. And a part of me was like, no. Not because I don't love chiropractors, but because if I'm going to be doing things, it has to be from the inside out. Like it has to nourish me, it has to nourish my family, it has to nourish my community in person first, right? And what I found is that when I say the script has been flipped, is that many of the people who I have been inspired by over the last 4 years, especially, have been, quote, lay people, right? But really, all we're doing is returning the power back to the people and returning people back to their lived experiences. And I almost feel like the work that you do is an invitation back, right? An invitation back to owning yourself so that there is no external thing that can further own you, right? And I'm curious if that sparks like a thought or a feeling or an experience that you can leave our community with that maybe continues that invitation, right? That invitation to then remember who they are and remember what they need to own and remember that in that space, should they do it for themselves, but that is maybe the key that actually helps allow for their children to be also inspired.
Yeah, I mean, I think it brings me to we are the masters of our own destinies. We're the masters of our present moment. We're the masters of how we see reality. Like, and actually, none of us are really seeing reality as it is. We're seeing it through all these filters, right? But only we have the keys in our back pocket to unlock and remove those filters to see how reality really is. And it's like we're it. No one else is going to do it for us. We're the ones, you know?
Yeah.
And I think in some ways it's so cliche to say, well, you know, you're the one you've been waiting for. I'm the one I've been waiting for. But we are. And there's so much like juice and capacity and skill and wisdom in a way that we don't even understand. I'll just give you one example. My dog, who's a little bit older, she's like my best friend. She's 14 years old, and she had to get some teeth removed. So she had to do this surgery, and she's got a heart murmur. And docs were all trying to freak me out. Like, you need to put her on this really strong heart medicine or her heart's going to stop. And so it was this kind of stressful experience. And there was a couple days after the surgery. It was like 2 a.m. Both of us were in the same bed, dead asleep. I wake up out of sleep like a log. I like bolt up at 2 a.m. and I look at her and she's not breathing and she's not moving. And so I like start shaking her. Hey, get up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And she didn't want to move. She didn't want to get up. So I just kind of kept going and kept shaking her and like kind of forced her to get up. I think probably what happened was that her blood pressure just dropped so low that she was just kind of like whispering out. But the interesting part is, and she's fine. I'm looking at her right now. What part of us knows, and I thought, this is like being a mother or father. Like, you have more access to that as a parent, that there is a part of you that is so, wow, like I could be dead asleep and some part of me is actually still awake and knows that she's not breathing and that I need to wake her up or she's gone, What is that inside of us? Like, what is that mother instinct that's like, oh my God, I need to go feed my baby? Or what's the father instinct that's like, I think my son needs my help, right? It's like, and I think the more we can open to this idea that we we have so much more capacity than our logical mind can even grasp, and that it's operating all the time, even when we think we're dead asleep. It's just another encouragement to like wake up. You know, when you wake up in the morning, you can tell yourself, or at any time during the day, like, wake up, wake up, wake up. It's like waking up that sleeping dragon. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Speed up this process. Like, I know there's more. Wake up.
On a daily basis, how many different remedies would you say that you use? Just curious.
Oh, like flowers, probably hundreds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
hundreds.
And
Yeah, because there's multiple in each bottle.
right. And total, your whole line is how many different remedies? Or not how many different flowers, but how many different?
So we have 18 catalyst blends. Those are working on family lineage and how we grew up patterns. Wow. And we have 8, soon to be 9 remedies that are more collective, that are really about collective patterns. And then a lot of kind of single random flowers in the mix in the garden, and dark chocolate and teas and other fun stuff.
And if someone were to begin this journey, how would you have them kind of navigate that initial step, but then how they then transition that into like a reckless experience?
Yeah. It's like you will become more and more and more and more fascinating to yourself, not in like an ego way. But it's like each person is different. The doorway is different. Dip your toe in, dive all in, come visit us at the San Center, get a private ceremony. That would be like the person who wants to dive all in. Yeah. If you want to dip your toe in, just like try one little elixir, try one little mist, you know, and share it with your kids and see how does it impact your family. And then let yourself lead the way. Let yourself trust yourself that you know exactly what you need and you can have just as much as you want. And you can shower yourself with as much petals and love and energy and vitality as you want. And you are the master.
From the elixirs to the mists to the anointing oils, what would you say is a uniqueness to what avenue or what processes an individual's experience?
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, I always feel like when people have like really deep patterns or things they're really wanting to change, we seem to be gravitated more to the elixirs. I don't know if that's just kind of a, you know, if it's in my body right away, it's like really deep doing something. I actually find that they're all equally as effective. But when you think of the mist, right, it's like instantly enveloping your etheric body. It's also something you can share with others in the space between you and others. Whereas the anointing oil is much more like concentrated and precise. So it's like if you want to put it on a particular acupuncture point or meridian that you want to tap into really quickly, you know, or like bath salts, like for full body immersion and all those energies. It's kind of just how you intuitively want to experience it.
That's cool. Katie, this has been awesome. I feel like I was sharing earlier, like the resonance that I had with you and Lotus Wei long before we were connected was something that maybe in the back of my mind and in my intuition, I knew was going to manifest into something. And then all of a sudden there's an email in my inbox and then we get to experience all the things that my family has. It's really interesting. We had to move this interview because we were going through this like wild like journey of every time my parents come to visit, which is one of the difficult things for my daughter, is that part of COVID was that, you know, everybody left California, and a big trauma for her is just not having her grandparents here. Mm-hmm. And when they come, it's this thing, right? It's this, there's something physiological, there's something emotional, there's something spiritual, there's something energetic. And I felt like this time that we knew something was going to come about. And then at the same time, when we did, it wasn't like, oh, it wasn't it wasn't like, oh, we took the instances, everything was rainbows and puppy dog. It was that when things started to kind of move through our family and through my daughter, there was this deep knowing that it was for her and that it was for us and that we moved through it. We had some of the similar triggers that came through it, but how that process through was like, we are landing on solid, like we know where we are. And we know that in the midst of the crucible and the chaos and the trauma and the craziness and the triggers, that we were exactly where we were supposed to be. And when we came out of the other side, almost on every single aspect of our lives, like we felt confident, we felt sure, we felt certain, and we also felt very humble, but also we felt very healed. And it was almost like this providential thing where in many respects, if we're not feeling well, I will push through and I will power through an interview and I will make it happen because that's just how I've been trained, you know? And it was a moment also where it's just like, okay, we're going to have to move this. And here we are talking about it. And it has been very cornerstone. Your influence and your inspiration and Lotus Wei and the essences, because I know for a fact that my daughter may not know exactly what it is that we're doing, but in her being, she does. And I know now that there's an invitation to be even more creative and be even more nonlinear and be even more intuitive and be more reckless with how we're helping guide her, because I think more than anything, like that's one of my biggest like drives right now. And so I really wanted to thank you for that. I wanted to thank you for everything that you shared, because I believe in this type of work. I believe in this type of, I believe it's our essence, and I believe it's what we know, as you shared, is our essence. And I believe it's an avenue that is so attractive. And that's something that is so interesting, right? It's so magnetic. The invitation to do the questionnaire, the invitation to like be seen through that process, the invitation to also like have whatever the algorithm is, come up with a recommendation, then also just to hear from you, like it was almost like we had been seen, heard, and validated and valued in ways that we had not yet experienced. And I would say that it has given us that ground to move through some things that we honestly didn't know where that inspiration was going to come from. So I'm very, very blessed and grateful.
I'm so touched. Thank you for sharing that.
As you probably know, I'm the clinic director of the Future Generations Clinic of Chiropractic. I wanted to invite those of you in the greater San Diego area to come check us out. We expect and experience miracles in our office every day and would love for you to experience the same, as well as your family, especially your kids. This month, we're offering our new patient package for just $67 for podcast listeners. The offer retails at $349 and includes an in-depth consultation where our patients literally tell us we know more about their family's health in the first 15 minutes than virtually every doctor on their healthcare team combined. Our state-of-the-art clinical workup, including Insight nervous system scans, full spine digital x-rays, and a functional exam. We also include a full report of your results, a customized plan to realize your greatest health potential, as well as your first adjustment in our office. Check out the link in the show notes for all the details and claim the offer. Love and appreciate you all.